Hello, Trinity Tigers, and welcome to the Learning Together series. Our live webinar is part of our lifelong learning activity initiatives presented by Trinity University's Office of Alumni Relations. Good afternoon. I'm Bob Scheer. I'm proud to serve as the Interim Dean of the School of Business here at Trinity University in San Antonio. It's my pleasure today to introduce my good colleague and friend, our webinar speaker, Mr. Josh Sigman, class of 2001. Josh is Vice President and Senior Loan Officer with Legacy Mutual Mortgage. Josh Sigman's strengths are leadership, negotiation, communication, and closing skills. He has more than 15 years of experience in professional sales in the mortgage industry. Josh today will discuss best negotiating skills and closing skills based upon personality profiles. Considering the time of his presentation, Josh has divided it into two parts. As you know, last Monday, Josh addressed part one of his presentation, where he provided insights into the four basic personality profiles and then reviewed with us how to best communicate with each of those personality types. Today, Josh will uncover the best closing and negotiation techniques for each of those personality types, and then close with educating how each of those personality types makes decisions. Please know that you can submit your questions along the way as Josh is talking with us today, or you can submit them at the end, but we'll have ample time to answer all of your questions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to part two of Best Negotiating and Closing Skills based on personality profiles, Josh Sigman.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it very much. I love this part. This is my favorite thing to talk about because I think it's very much a game that we can all learn and work off of. And for those of you guys that tuned in last time, I really hope that this ties it all together for you. So just like the dean said, bottom line was the first part was all about personality profiling and understand who it is that you're speaking with. This time, what we're going to really focus on is, okay, so now you understand that, how can this work for your benefit, whether it be winning the job in an interview if you're up against 5 other people, or if you're in a sales position, how to get somebody to select you, buy from you, or select your service, or down to how do you just save money when you're negotiating with an AC repairman. So it's a very much a practical kind of discussion. And so what I'd encourage anyone listening to do is, if you do have questions, I know I speak about 5 times the normal speed limit. Please interrupt us and send in questions via chat or by email, and I'll be happy to slow down, repeat, or answer your questions. So we're going to break this into 2 segments, and the first piece here is going to be, we're going to talk about the closing skills. There's lots of books, lots of classes people can take, and you might have read a couple books yourselves about it. So I like to really dummy it down. I believe very simply that closing skills is sometimes emotional, but most often it's intellectual. And so I'll kind of work through that a little bit. And then we'll take some Q&A time in the middle for 3 or 5 minutes if needed, and then we'll go into negotiating skills. So the question that always comes up is, what's the difference? And the easiest way that I teach it and try and get people to remember it is, I believe that closing skills drive revenue to a company, whereas negotiation skills really define the profit. If closing skills are get somebody to make a sale or choose to use you, the negotiation skills determine how much of that price the company gets to keep. And so it's really important. And I want to kind of go off on a small tangent here at the beginning, because I think that a lot of people hear closing and think it's a dirty word. I can think of the times that we might have had a bad sales experience, or where it felt dirty, where we bought a car from somebody and they felt sleazy, or a mortgage or an insurance guy or whatever. And so what I want to point out is, it's not a dirty word. The bottom line is that the salesperson did a poor job of speaking your language and helping you make the decision the way you want to make the decision. And that's why it felt dirty. So if you remember, just a real quick catch up, the 4 personalities being D, I, S, and C. The easiest way to break that down in my mind is just to think of it as people make decisions with either their head, their heart, or their gut. Okay? So the reminder being that a long time ago, we were all being chased by dinosaurs. And some of us survived because we turned and ran really quickly. And that's because we made decisions with our gut. And then as we started to grow with societies and communities, we started to care about other people and making sure we watched out for them. And so we started having that heart to think about the big picture, about others, not just ourselves. And then as our brains got a little bit bigger and we started having a mammalian brain that really focused on logic and reason, some of us started making decisions with our head. And so it's really important to help people, guide people through that process. And you can think about who's who. I always think about when I'm talking to an IT director, when I'm talking to an attorney, a CPA, more than likely I've got to give more information, give some lists, give some information to help them make a decision better for themselves. When I'm talking with somebody that's a really fast, make decisions kind of person, I don't want to bore them to death with details. I want to give them the most important information and let them make the decision because they're going to make a gut decision really quickly. And then if I'm speaking with somebody that's a heart decision maker, I want to help them through stories and storytelling and get them past the point of the sale. And so as I worked through these, there was an additional couple attachments that were sent out with this webinar that you can kind of follow along. And I go out of order for a point to make sure people are taking notes. So as far as closing skills goes, there's a few closing skills that I believe you should use with everyone as your first attempt. And then some of those that move forward, and I'll identify which ones you're going to use for a head, heart, or gut kind of buyer. So really simply, the assumption here, because this could be a 5-hour class and it's not, the assumption is that as a salesperson, as somebody that's trying to help somebody make an educated, informed decision, that you've already done a good job of fact finding. So in theory, you're not selling something that somebody doesn't need or want. You have guided somebody to a process where they're ready to make a buying decision. Okay. So assuming that somebody's at that point where they're ready to make a buying decision, that's where this class starts. Okay. The last question that I always ask every borrower in mortgages, or what I teach people, whether they're buying high-end earrings or whether they're buying just an insurance policy that you have to buy, the last question I believe always is, do you have any more questions? Okay? Because what I want to make sure is, even though my gut check tells me I think we're there, I think we're at the decision-making point, I still want to give them one last opportunity to broach any other issues, because I don't know if there's an objection that I've got to handle before I attempt to quote-unquote close the sale. So the first closing technique is called the assumption close. And the assumption close very simply is that in the absence of more questions, I assume that we're going to the next step. And that is literally the script that you use. The script that you use is, the next step is. So whether you need to sign a contract, whether you need to go to the cash register, if there's no questions, then literally you might say is, the next step is, I've got to get some signatures from you. I've already got the paperwork prepared. Go ahead and initial line A, right? And that whole point of it is that sometimes actually not sometimes, the majority of salespeople that don't have a basic knowledge of this and don't understand it intrinsically, they actually at this point talk people out of sales. When they talk through that and they keep on boring people to death if they're talking to a D personality, or they're giving more information about a tangent, or they're confusing a buyer like a C personality, too many choices is a bad thing. I'll give you a story here that I think will sink home, but I remember a couple of years ago that I made this decision that I was going to go buy my wife some diamond earrings. And I know nothing about diamond earrings, just enough to be dangerous. When I realized Christmas was around the corner, I started watching these infomercials at midnight. And so I know that there's 5 C's and I can recite them all off. But at the end of the day, that's about the knowledge any of us have about other people's industry, enough to be dangerous. So what I do, I stopped at the first diamond place on the way home, a place called Stone Oak Jewelers. And I walked in the door. And luckily, I ended up talking to the owner. And so I talked to the owner and said, hey, listen, here's my price range. Here's what I want, I think, in size and cut and carat and all these things. And just give me, what options do I have? Now, remember, I'm a D personality. I make decisions like that, right? So I sit down with this guy, and he pulls out 3 different sets of diamond earrings. And it sounds something like this abbreviated. Hey, this one's at the low end of your budget. Here's what's great about them. Here's what you might like. Here's what you dislike. Here's the high end of the budget. Actually, it's a little bit over your budget, but you get a little bit more in this carat and this color. And then this one nicely in the middle. And my question literally, because I'm a D personality, was, which one would you buy? And he said, this one. And he obviously went to the highest price one, but he said, I would buy this one because. And literally what I did was I reached towards my back pocket to pull my wallet out. And I would call that a buying decision. I was there. If I'm reaching for my wallet, I'm there. He said, but you can't go wrong with this one either. And so I used the words that every salesperson doesn't want to hear, which is, I need to think about it. And I left. And on the drive home, I remember that one of my dear friends of mine that lives in California has a wife that happens to sell diamond earrings, and she happens to know my wife. So I called up Nicole and I said, hey, Nicole, this is what I'm thinking about doing for Christmas. She said, Josh, I know exactly what your wife's taste is. I'll have something for you in 5 minutes. Let me call you right back. I'll tell you what you're going to buy your wife. And she called me and said, A, B, C, which all fit my marks. She said, I promise you, Chrissy's going to love it. And I said, cool, here's my credit card information. My point is, the first salesperson talked himself out of a sale because he just kept on going. So the point is, when you get through that assumption close, it's in the absence of questions, assume that the next step is you need to sign here or pull out your wallet, right? Now, realistically, most of us, especially rookie people in sales or service, we understand that we're going to miss something. We're humans, we're going to miss some nonverbal or verbal cue. So the backup is when they say no, or they pause, or they say, I just need to think about it some more. The secondary close that I always point out is used what's called the why not close. Now listen, I'm not telling you to literally say why not. That would be a poor choice. That's what should be yelling in your head. What did I miss? Why not? Why wouldn't they buy this product or service from me? Why wouldn't they choose me over these other candidates? Because what we do know in all sales and all industries is if somebody needs to think about it, you didn't have a compelling value add that they thought they needed right now, which means they're still shopping and they're unlikely to come back to you because you've already done the pitch. So they're going to shop your value against somebody else out there. More often than not, they do not come back to that person. Okay, so if you end the conversation there, the game's over most often. So the why not conversation literally comes down to what did I miss? And so what I always say is a basic script, and what I try to teach people is, hey, apologize. Apologize because you missed something. There was something important to this person, whether it had to do with price or follow-up or service or whatever it was that you didn't uncover. So it's okay to know that there's going to be an objection. Just ask yourself why not, apologize, and see if there's an objection you can uncover before they leave. Because quite often it's a small thing. If you do that, you can be done with the sale right then and there. So the why not close literally comes after they say, hey, listen, I am so sorry. I must have missed something. When we started this conversation, you said you wanted A, B, and C, and I thought that we uncovered A, B, and C. So I clearly missed something. What else is there out there that's for consideration or is an objection for you? Because I want to make sure while you're thinking about tonight that you have all the answers in front of you. Okay? So the point of this conversation is that you don't say why not, but it is a secondary close because more often than not, there will be objections to whatever it is that you're selling, doing, interviewing for. So what did I miss is the question that you ask, okay? Outside of that, and hopefully, by the way, you can overcome the objection and go on moving forward and closing that business, okay? So then what do you do outside of that as far as typical closing techniques for the follow-up? Because now we get into who are you speaking to, the head, heart, or gut. I think the first one you start with, it has to be what's called the list summary close. And so which personalities you use this on is going to be either a gut person, a gut decision maker, which is going to be your D personalities, or your head people, which is your C personalities, okay? The idea very simply is that it's called a list summary because first off, you list off all of the attributes that you believe that you heard this person say that they want or need or desire. And then you're summarizing what product or service it is that you're selling in conjunction with the list to make sure you didn't miss anything. So I'm in mortgages. I use real estate as an example a lot. I think that's good for this webinar because virtually everyone will or has bought a house already. So you think about if you're a realtor out there and you're showing properties, you might have, if you're a good realtor, you might have asked a lot of questions, uncovered that somebody wants a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 3-car garage on a cul-de-sac in Comal ISD, under $500,000 in property, 1-story house, okay? So if I find a house, we know in real estate, there's no 100% house. If you can find 90% of what you want, you buy it. But if I don't go through the exercise of proving and demonstrating that I listened to you and comparing that to the house that we're looking at, then it's going to be more difficult to get somebody to make a buying decision. So the list summary close just says, hey, listen, you said that you wanted A, B, C, D, F, and G. And this has everything but G. So either this is the house we need to make an offer on for you, or G happens to be on a cul-de-sac. I should never show you a house that's not on a cul-de-sac ever again, because that's the reason why you're not making a decision on this house if it has everything else, or I missed something else. Which one is it? And so it helps people process where I'd really like to be on a cul-de-sac, but hey, this has everything else I'm looking for in the price range and in the school district I'm looking for. Yes, I can go ahead and move forward. But what it demonstrates is I heard you, I compared it. The only thing I would say that you might want to do with a C personality is go into Z, A through Z, instead of with the D personality, I just want A through E. That's about it. Give me the high level, square footage, the basic stuff, the price range, the ISD, the things I said were most important. Go into exquisite detail with a C personality is the only difference between those two. And you can call one an option close versus a list summary close. Gut people really want to do just an option close. Okay, if you're asking me, I remember when we spoke on D personalities, typically egocentric a little bit, want to be the man or woman, want to make the decision, but also want to feel like we're in control. So all that means is don't pigeonhole somebody into a corner. Just say, hey, listen, we in that same analogy of real estate, we looked at 5 houses a day. I believe that based on what was important to you, we narrowed down to these top 2. This one has A, B, C, and D. This one has all 5 of them, though. This one's a little bit over your price range. Which one's not? Which one would you like to make an offer on? And just giving me the driver's seat for a second, I'm going to make a gut decision, and we're going to make an offer. It's really that simple for a D personality. So that's called an option close versus that list summary, which is really dialed in for a C personality. Some of you out there are listening and thinking, well, neither of those really apply to me. And it's probably because you're an emotional person. And emotional people, the S's and the I's of the world, like to make their decisions with their heart. So think about this. If the first 2 scenarios I gave you, you're thinking, icky, that sounds salesy to me, that's exactly why you felt negative in a sales situation in the past, because you like making decisions with your heart, and neither of those apply to you, okay? So I have 3 kids. I've got a 10-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy, and a 5-year-old girl, and there's one place in the world I'll never take the 3 of them. You want to guess what place that is? Anyone in the audience? No, it's called a pet store. Okay, so the reason I'm not going to go to a pet store with my 3 kids is I'd have to get a pet for each of them if I take them into a pet store, because we all know the second a child smells that puppy breath and feels that soft puppy fur, they have to have it. It's past the money. You look at your kid's eyes, it's going to be bought, right? And truthfully speaking, that's the truth with adults as well that are emotion decision makers. Sometimes my wife says, I want this, and it has nothing to do with logic or reason. It's just she wants it because she feels like it's the right choice. In sales, there's a ton of times that some people I've spoken to are frustrated because they say, hey, I know everything was perfect. Logically, this makes a lot of sense. But their response is, just doesn't feel right. Just doesn't feel like the right time. Just doesn't feel like the right house. And it has nothing to do with logic and reasoning. But here's another example. When my wife and I bought our last house, I remember we had walked in the front door, and we get about 10 steps in, and I stop. Because I knew based on the MLS sheet and just looking at my wife's reaction to the first 5 steps, I knew in my gut it was the right house for her. So I stopped the agent so he couldn't screw it up for me, because I was tired of looking at houses, right? So my wife was walking around, and the reason I knew it was the right house was she started looking at blank walls. And the reason why she was looking at blank walls is she was picturing what she was going to have to put on that blank wall. So as an emotional decision maker, somebody that makes decisions in pictures, she was already past the sale. If she was past the sale, it wasn't about the money or logic or reason. It was that's the right house for her. She felt it when she walked in. And so when she walked back to me and the realtor on the way out, my question to her was, well, what do you think, honey? And she said, I don't know. It's nice. Let's go look at another house. And my agent, a friend of mine, missed the boat. I said, babe, now let me back up and tell you what her 3 hot buttons were. Okay, mind you, at the time we had 2 kids, and she was cooking one on the way. The third one was on the way at that time. She wanted a 1-story house. More importantly, she wanted an open floor plan with a fireplace because her old house did not have a fireplace. It was really important to her that there was a big blank wall next to the fireplace because a picture she had in her head was a beautiful Christmas tree next to her wood-burning fireplace on Christmas morning with 3 kids. And she wanted an open floor plan where she could see the backyard because having 2 young kids, she knew we wanted to have a pool one day. She wanted to be able to be in the kitchen or be in the living room and look out the window and keep track of the kids. I knew that those were the feeling-wise the most important things to her. So before I let her walk out the door, I said, babe, I think you missed it. I think this is the right house. Like, I see you standing over there prepping food in the kitchen, looking out the window and watching our kids play in the pool. Now, mind you, there was not a pool there. It was a blank canvas backyard. I said, and look, babe, look at that big, beautiful wall. I bet you we can get a 12-foot Christmas tree right there, right next to the fireplace. So what did she do? She walked over to the sink and she stood there and she looked out the window at a non-existent pool and watched 3 kids, not 2, swimming in it. And then she heard Christmas morning. And that's where we live today. It's called a puppy dog close. You get emotional people past the sale to visualize themselves driving that car and how it makes them feel, or standing there on Christmas morning and the sale is already all but done. Okay, so that's what's called a puppy dog close. Another one is called a you deserve it close. Guys, there's 30, 50 different names to different closes, and some of, whether it's a Rockefeller close or whatever, Carnegie close, it doesn't matter. I've narrowed them down to what I believe are the 6 that are the most effective in any environment. And this is one that you've probably not heard before, but it's so true. If we know that emotional buyers make decisions out of emotion, the most powerful emotion that prevents decision making is fear. That's the most powerful emotion. Fear of the unknown, fear of what else there might be out there, fear of making the right decision, fear of what my friends and family or daddy or mom might think of me for making this decision. Fear, 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 fear. So you deserve it comes back to, if you're a professional, one thing I really believe is that most people don't lead their clients. They just give information. I believe, and this will tie later on into consultation and into negotiation, I believe that the most powerful business leaders, the smartest and brightest and best salespeople where it feels like a great decision, whether it's a D, I, S, or C personality, is because the client is led and it feels good to be led, especially in decisions where, like I said, I was dangerous with my with knowledge of diamonds. But the second my friend took the reins and said, Josh, I got this. I know what's going to make your wife happy. Let me take care of this for you. It was like, I'm being led to the finish line. That feels good for me. Okay? So my point in saying this is the you deserve it close definitely applies to all I's and S's. And basically what it comes down to is sometimes you're talking to somebody about your product, your service, or about hiring you or whatever, and you feel unease in the room, and you've got to address it. Because remember, personality-wise, especially S's, remember they're non-aggressive. So they might have a concern about you, the product, the service, the price, the whatever, but they're not aggressive enough to tell you about it. And so you've got to literally call it what it is. I'll literally say, hey, listen, I feel some negative energy in the room and I'm concerned about your fear about this process. And I literally use the words feel, how you're feeling, and fear. And the reason is I want to bring that to the surface. Tell me how you're feeling about this process so far. Tell me what your biggest fear is about, in my case, about buying a home. What is it? And they'll tell you because you care enough to ask, which goes back to when I'm a D personality or an analytical, logic-based person, and I'm speaking to an emotional person, how do I bridge that gap? You just got to talk about it. Hey, listen, I do care about you. I certainly don't want you to be fearful. What is it that's your biggest concern? What's your biggest hot button? And people will tell you everything across the galaxy. Literally, whether it's, if you're the first person I talk to, I just want to make sure I talk to somebody else, or I feel like I should, or, I'm here by myself and I'm a single mom buying my first house. I want to talk to my dad, or I feel like I'm afraid of making the wrong decision. You can say, hey, listen, I'd say this all the time. Do you want to call your dad right now? I'm happy to answer any of his questions on the phone right now too, right? Like, let's address the issue head on. It's definitely something we want to work through, but bottom line is my job is to lead my client to the finish line. And at the end of it, one question I always ask is, are you excited about the house? Because if they're excited about it, they get themselves past that sale, that puppy dog close, and then you address and make sure that you're leading people, and you come back to, listen, we've already addressed A, B, C, and D. You're good. I would not let you buy something that you shouldn't be buying. You deserve it. That's where that's coming from, is just addressing the fear. Whatever the fear really is, and the only way to find out is by asking what the fear is. What's the hot button? What really matters to you? Let's talk about this. I want to understand it, okay? So that really knocks out the heart decision makers, the I's and the S's, okay? There's 2 last closes I want to talk about before we move on. Just some Q&A here in about 3 minutes. And I think these can be used on anybody. The first one I want to talk about is what's called the takeaway close. Because here's the thing. I believe in any business, not all business people, not all salespeople are meant to work with everybody. We all have a parameter of the way we do business, the way that our company works or whatever. And there's sometimes a misalignment, a disalignment of a client to a product or service. And I don't think we do any favors to ourselves or company or team or to the client if we can't get people on the same railroad tracks. So for example, let's just say that you want to meet the best surgeon in town. What I talk about is most great businesses have what's called a barrier of entry. And typically the better the business, the higher the barrier. Like you already have to meet with your primary care physician, you have to have a recommendation to me, you have to give your insurance information over the phone ahead of time so we can make sure that you understand what you're on the hook for or not. But all these things are what I call barriers of entry. Use it in my world as a mortgage guy. Before I'll guarantee any rates, I absolutely require that I've pulled your credit for sure and see your paychecks, bank statements, and tax returns. Why? Because I can't give you a real number without all that information. I can give you hopes and dreams, and all banks can, but the reality is, until I get that, I can't be accurate, and it's important to me to be accurate. Now that's a barrier of entry, and sometimes people say, nope, that's okay, I appreciate the conversation. My other bank's not requiring that, it's making the process a little easier, I'll go with them, and that's okay with me. All my point is here is that when somebody is not willing to play by your rules, the takeaway close is that, listen, I really want to help you, but the way we do business is A, B, and C. So if you don't want to do A, B, and C, I'm happy to refer you to a different bank or go use this other bank or go use this other doctor or this other attorney. But the way we do business and the reason why you referred to me is because we do it at a high level, but these are the basic requirements we need to get things started, okay? What happens is this, and it's beautiful either way. Some people say, oh, no problem, Josh, I didn't understand that, and they get you everything you need to get the process started so you can be accurate in your business. And the other half will say, no problem at all, thank you so much, who else would you refer me to? And I'll happily refer them somebody that's a better fit. The client experience is a win on both sides. My team's experience is better on both sides, whether because there's not this mismatch of pulling teeth one way or the other. So takeaway closes are just at the end of the day, we've got to say, this is how I do things. It's not a take it or leave it, but you get to choose. I want to serve you the best you want to, but I can't serve you in the way you're acting. This is what we need to do, okay? Outside of that, the last one's called the obligation close, and I really love this one because I'm a big believer in serve people first, and then you can ask them to help serve you. I think about this in terms of, do you have a referral-based business or not? Do your employees recommend their friends and family? Do your clients send client after client to you because of the experience? It's a great gauge. The obligation close is basically something where all you've got to do is give them something that they perceive as value first, and then it's totally okay to ask for something in return. Or anytime that you violate your rules, the way you do business, and you do something extraordinary for them, it's okay to say in return, I'd like blank. So an obligation close might be anything from you just trying to set an appointment with somebody, or maybe get a referral after you discount your fees for this car purchase or whatever. Now, what it might sound like is, listen, you've asked me to go above and beyond, and I return your calls on Sunday night, and we drop the price to literally what other people that work here at this car dealership buy cars for. And I did that because when I spoke to my boss, I said, I think that you're in the right industry. I think you're the right person. I would like to work with you more. So if we actually do drop this price to the last $500 to accommodate your needs to earn your business as a client, can I rely on you for 2 referrals for other people buying cars in the next 30 days? And it's an okay either way. It's a yes or a no. And then you can make a business decision of if you really want to violate your business policies or your pricing policies for this one-off client. Because in theory, you're getting something returned back if you both agree, right? This ties into negotiation skills in a second, but bottom line is, I see a lot of business people, especially small self-employed people, that give away the farm, which actually financially is a mistake for their business, a mistake, on the hopes and dreams that they're going to get a referral or a contact out of it in the future to make it worthwhile. But because they don't put words to it and say, hey, listen, if I will you, which is all an obligation is if I do this, will you agree to this? They don't have the reason or the expectation cemented in that person's head of, I'm doing something extraordinary for you. Can I rely on a referral from you in the future? Or can I rely on you to buy from me again in the future? Or can I get an introduction to your HR director in the future if I do this for you? Okay? That's one of the most powerful obligation closes because it came from you provided value first. And that's the key. Whatever that means in your business, in your product, in your service, provide value first, then it's okay to say, hey, can I rely on you for a referral a year? That's enough, okay? So in the interest of time, I want to stop on the closing segment. I do want to give one book recommendation and then open up for any questions if there are some, but a great book to read is something called The Challenger Sale. The Challenger Sale basically kind of walks through how most salespeople deal with closing types and techniques and where the misfires happen. And more importantly, it really proves the point that being that servant leader and leading the client to the finish line and challenging the way of thinking and being a consultant in the practice of being a salesperson ends automatically in better results than the other types of closing techniques out there. So were there any questions that we need to flip over to, Dean?
Josh, I've got a question for you at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just listening to the different closings and the approaches, I really appreciated the examples because they brought home to me, the why it's called the puppy dog close, why it's called the you deserve it close, the take away the assumption, and put in my mind examples that I believe that I can use not only in a sales position but in working with people that I encounter and meet every day. My key question for you is, how do you identify, Josh, which close to use?
Yeah, so I think it starts with the DISC personality conversation we spoke about in the last segment, which just basically is the two big questions I always go to are, first of all, is this person logical or emotional? Which in a short conversation with anyone, if you're just asking yourself in your head with open-ended questions, logical, emotional, logical, emotional, logical, emotional, are they detail-oriented in their responses? Are they analytical in their questions or in their answers? Versus, flowery, bubbly, talking in pictures, automatically sociable, then you have a better guide. And I thought one of the best questions that came up last time is, what mistakes or what things come out of guessing wrong? Well, what comes out of it is people feel like they're buying from the wrong person because you communicate incorrectly. So once you've pegged somebody the best you can on emotional or logical, the second one is aggressive or non-aggressive, right? Because once we have that grid, which we send out, it's one of the handouts out there, you've got the analytical, emotional person. Basically, you know who you're dealing with, and then you can sell that way after you've done an assumption close and after you've done the why not close. That's the order of operations, in my opinion. You're assuming always that they're here for a reason. They're here to buy from you. You've answered all their questions. You ask one final time, do you have any other questions for me? If the answer is no, go right into the next step is we need to sign this loan paperwork. You say no. I'm not afraid of that. It's okay for you to have an objection. I assume I missed something, so I apologize. I'm so sorry, Dean. I must have missed something that was really important to you. I thought we addressed all your questions. What else is out there that you need to worry about or think about? Maybe I can address that for you right now. Then you bring up whatever the objection is, and now I go back to your personality, the best that I can gauge you on. I try to close with that list summary close is my best guess for you because of what you're wearing, by the way. So I'd literally go back and say, what I heard you say was you wanted A, B, C, D, and E. This one has 4 of the 5, so either this 5th one is so important to you that you don't want to do business, or there's something else I missed. Which one is it?
Okay.
Right? So that's how the order of operations works, which allows you, again, this is not a 100% game. My job as a professional sales coach, my job as a sales manager for my company, my job as just being in service and sales is to increase your percentage of success. Because what so many people miss is we bump across, 1,000, you call it 1,000 people in a year that might want to buy your product or service. And if we could just increase your conversion ratio by 5%, that's a mathematical exponential equation to your profitability because you're doing the same amount of work, same amount of hours. But if we could just add 3 or 4 or 5 more sales per month, every single month, because you're just paying attention to and speaking their way and closing them the way that feels good to them to be closed, it's a game changer. And that's what this class is all about.
Interesting. It's really what I'm gathering is that, or gaining from listening to you on the different types of closes and how to identify which one to use, is it's really a dynamic process.
Yes, sir.
That you work with one of the closes the best you can and understanding the person and looking at the cues that you have from that person through your discussions or observations, but then can shift into another close until you finally reach that agreement, if you will, or congruency that you've closed that particular transaction.
Yes, sir. And I'll give you an example. So just cues that I pick up just watching. So we were here 30 minutes in advance, and the dean had questions about what happens when the queue goes on, super detailed, right? Like, are you going to make this? What should I read? Is there anything I should add, subtract? Which camera should I look at? Well, those are cues for an analytical person, right? So you probably have some C personality in you. So if I wasn't detail oriented enough, you would not buy from me, right? At the same time, you were the one that raised your hand and said, I'd like to be the interim chair, which D personalities do that. I's, S's, C's don't. D personalities do. So if I had to peg you, I'd probably say you're some sort of DC personality. And based on the fact that you wear conservative outfit, blues on blues, I'm just curious, because it's not going to be, this is not staged, by the way. I'm just curious if I'm close to right. Am I close to right or not?
I would have to think about it for a
Yeah.
minute. That probably puts me into
about
another.
it?
That put me into
That's
another
a C
category.
personality. Well, you use the word, right? So here's something that's a funny cue, by the way. People that are analytical use the word think a lot, by the way. People that are heart people use the word feel a lot. So if you hear the word think, it's an indicator I'm right that you're a C personality.
Okay. That's fantastic.
But I'd love you for you to take the DISC personality test and send it to me and just see how close I am.
Fantastic.
But that's the game, and that's what I love. I think you see my energy just perked up a little bit because I love that personality, that people game. And if for nothing else, to provide a better experience during a sales process, right? Because if I am right, and again, maybe I'm not, but percentage-wise, I'm probably more right than not because of this conversation, then I'm more likely to send emails that are more detail-oriented. I'm more likely to take more time making sure that all your questions are addressed. I'm more likely to comparison price 5 different mortgage companies and show you all 5 options, so you know that I did the detailed legwork to make you feel better about working with me, as an example, right? And that's the name of the game. It's just it's basics, it's fundamentals, and I think a lot of people lose this through the amount of texting we do, the amount of emails we do, the amount of meetings that are virtual, and so you don't get that interaction, and that's what I'm trying to teach, and you can do half of this over the phone. So was there any other questions from the audience I want to address?
Yeah, Josh, just one observation is that one of our alumni participants in the webinar today asked, should I be frantically taking notes as Mr. Sigman is making his presentation? And the answer is that's always a good idea.
It's a great idea. That being said, I do believe that this will be saved on Trinity's Facebook. Am I right in saying that?
On the website.
On the website. So this whole dialogue will be saved, so you can watch it and listen to it to exhaustion if you'd like to. We're not very good looking to look at, but you can watch as much as you would like to.
And I believe we'll also be sending out a packet of information.
It has been sent out already, yes, sir.
Fantastic. And then another question from one of our alumni viewers that says, I work in Hollywood, and as you can imagine, there are big egos in my business. Josh, how do you recommend handling a bully? Someone who doesn't really...
I love that. So the answer is, I'll tell you about a sales experience that I had. So by the way, if you want to go into a great closing class, another resource, there's a company called, and I'm not affiliated, it's called Asher Strategies, A-S-H-E-R Strategies. And they have done the best, in my view, of in a day course or 2-day course, and they've got different lengths of really going through this in exquisite detail, and I learned a lot from them. Long story short is when I was selling insurance, I sold insurance out of college for about 2 years. And I had a great sales mentor, and the guy was teaching me about exactly this. You know, every once in a while you're going to do bills. Now think about insurance. There's 2 types of clients that you deal with. One is they absolutely do not like spending money on insurance. None of us do. And they do qualify, but they don't want to talk to you. And the other side is they need you, but it's too late. They can't qualify, especially for what I was selling. I was selling long-term care insurance and life insurance. So I aged 15 years in 2 years because of the number of times I have to tell somebody, I'm sorry I can't help you, or you're already diagnosed with this horrible disease. So it's a really rough environment, but I had a great sales mentor, and he was teaching me some different tactics, and that's actually where I learned about the takeaway close. So I walk into this office, at the time I do house calls for insurance, and it was up in Canyon Lake, and I go to this house of an attorney. And I walk in, and it was prototypical 1980s mahogany wood, big desks, deer heads on every single wall. And I sat in this tiny little chair in front of his desk that was elevated with a chair that was elevated so he could look down on me. And that's not by accident. That is a by design, make you uncomfortable situation that a lot of people do at different companies. You think about when you walk into a boardroom, the head of state sits where? The head of the table, everyone's focuses on them. And so that's the personality type you're talking about, right? So it goes back to this. You have to really design what your minimum barriers of entries are. You have to design exactly the way you do business. And it's okay to understand that not all of those clients are going to play by your rules. So that's where you employ the takeaway close of, listen, you see, like a great example. So if I was selling real estate, if I'm an agent going back to that exact same house, what I would do is, because an attorney in theory can write their own contract, right? They don't need a realtor. So I would say something like this. Hey, out of curiosity, you're super bright, you're a contracts attorney. How many houses have you negotiated the sale on or purchase on in the last 10 years? And they'll say something like, oh, I'm really a big deal. I bought or sold 5 investment properties without a realtor. That'd be fantastic. So I closed 15 deals this month. I did 15 deals last month and 15 deals the month before. So I'm really good at this. If you don't need an expert, it's okay not to hire me. But I promise you, you don't need a great realtor until there's a problem, and I'm a great realtor to handle good problems. So something like that, it's like, I do business this way. If you don't want to do business, we don't have to be clients. We don't have to have that relationship. And so that's the takeaway close is play by my rules or get on with it, right? And you've got to be prepared to lose the business. And I am. Like, who wants to work with somebody that's horrible to talk to on a daily basis? Going back to that scenario though, with my specific meeting with that insurance with that attorney, I remember that at that time, this goes into negotiations, I'll start tying it into it. I just got really quiet. So I asked the question of a buying decision. He looked at me with a blank stare, and I just stared back at him. And there was a big clock behind his head. I remember this. And I'd asked him to, I told him there were no other questions. I asked him to sign the paperwork. He just stood there looking at me. And I watched the clock behind him tick for 7 minutes without either of us saying a word. And he started laughing and signed the paper. He said, "You've taken good classes." So you just have to be okay in your own skin. Silence is golden. So I think that's a great segue because we only have about 20 minutes left to go into negotiation skills. So remember I said closing skills drive revenue. Again, 5% more of your leads convert. You're doing better than you did last year, right? Negotiation skills determine profit though, because there's certain people that they give away the farm. They've got a great top line revenue, but they're darn near bankrupt as a company, or they're costing their company money because they're giving away the farm in every single deal. Either way is bad. So when you think about negotiation skills, you have to tie it into 3 different segments. One is mindset, one is commitment, and then what are the actual skills themselves. So starting with mindset, there's 3 mindsets that people negotiate out of. The first mindset is called a subservient mindset, which basically means, going back to whoever it was that spoke up about being in Hollywood and everyone's the egocentric maniac, right? Then a lot of times you enter those negotiations either submissively allowing yourself to be subservient, or being looked at like that attorney looked at me as in a subservient negotiation. Let me tell you why you've got to exit that. If you start there, it'll just get worse. It will just get worse. They'll beat you up for whatever extra concession on whatever at the beginning, and they'll be unhappy with the entire process throughout. And at the very end of the deal you did for the thinnest, or the way that you broke your rules and it was horrible for your team or your company, at the very end they'll ask for more, and then they'll be the one to give you a 1 on a Yelp review. That's literally what happens. So I believe the best way out of it is literally to do the takeaway close. This is how I work. Are you good with it or not? If the answer is no, cool. Move on. Okay? The second one is called a gunfighter mindset. And we've all been in these before as well, where basically you feel like you're in a gunfight. You feel like you go into it and you're being attacked the moment you get into it. And and I think about husbands and wives a lot. And this is what I was told by my pastor when I was right before we got married. He said, "Josh, you can be married or you can be right. It's your call." Right? Which basically means you stay in those gunfights, it's not going to end very well. And so what it really comes down to is when you allow yourself to stay in a gunfight negotiation, there will be one winner, there will be one loser. It's a zero-sum game. And at the end, the thing that's lost forever is the relationship. But what I've found in business over 15 years is that most people don't wake up in the morning deciding they want to be a jerk and ruin your life. So a lot of people are in that gunfighter negotiation because they don't know better or no one's ever called them on it. I believe the way out of it is to call it what it is. Hey, I feel like we're in a gunfight, and you've got a super great reputation in town, and I'm going to be around for a long time. I'm sure we'll bounce against each other again in the future. I want to make sure when all this is done that we both feel like we won. So can we get out of this like he said, she said, this gunfight kind of negotiation and just figure out how we can both win? It'd feel better for me. How would that feel for you? And if you just bring it to the surface that this is you'd like a relationship, most of the time, a normal person will say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that. And yes, of course I'd like to do that. In real estate, I can think of literally hundreds of agents that will not show certain agents' homes. Literally. Now think about it as a client. There are agents that will not show your home if you're listed with a specific agent because of how horrible the negotiations have been with that agent in the past. Think about that. That costs the end client. So I just tell people, hey, listen, we're going to be around for a long time. Let's just negotiate and make this be a win-win for everybody, right? Which goes to the last mindset, which is the one you want to operate out of, which is problem solver, right? If we go into this with an open mind that, hey, listen, it might not work out, but let's work the problem together. Let's figure out how the buyer, the seller, the agents, how everyone can win, how everyone feels good about this. Let's feel about you're buying these diamonds. As long as I feel good about it, it really doesn't matter what the price is. As long as I feel good about it and you feel good about it and you didn't lose money and I didn't, overpay by 3 times, it's a win-win for everybody, right? So that's where you want to operate out of. Now, a couple asterisks I put aside that are not written down. So this is worth writing down. Number 1, whoever drops the first number is probably going to lose. Just saying. So I'll just use an easy example as far as selling and buying houses, okay? Let's say a house is listed for $500,000. And an agent, a buyer goes to the house and says, let's lowball them. Let's just see what happens. And they send over a $400,000 offer that for sure the seller's not going to even think about. Bottom line is if they send back like, hey, let's keep them involved, let's keep on negotiating, and we just send back $390 to keep the conversation going, is the price $400 or is the price $390 as a starting point? Because the first number was dropped, right? That's the point. So whenever it's possible, ask them what they think is fair. Ask them what they're trying to achieve. Ask them what they're hoping to achieve, right? Because usually when you get into that negotiation with numbers up front, that's a start of a negotiation, okay? That gets the right way with the mindset. The second piece is commitment, okay? So it's really simple. Whoever's the most committed to value, product, and service wins. The higher your level of commitment to your value, when you know that you are the best at blank, when you know you provide the most for the same price, when you know that your skill, your knowledge, your abilities are better than every other blank out there, then you're going to win more often. You're certainly not going to discount. I think about it like, so my son broke his arm, by the way, over Thanksgiving. It was a horrible break. It was gnarly. It literally looked like a Z. Like my son's arm went up and then out. It was not good looking. I was out west of Hondo, which is an hour and a half west of San Antonio. I drove an hour and a half into downtown San Antonio. Why? Because I wanted to be with the best ortho surgeon I was aware of in San Antonio. And I didn't ask the question, how much is this going to cost? I wanted the best from the best. Okay? So it goes back to how is my negotiation? Before they started the surgery, did they say, now, did I say, well, first, before we get started, will you take half the price? Right? They're super good. They're super. They're world renowned. The price is the price. They're committed. You think about that in terms of any industry. When you see people immediately slashing, burning prices, it's a very good indicator they're not clear to themselves that they are the best in whatever they do. Okay. A great little exercise is to create a WOW checklist, spelled W-O-W. How many times can you get your client to say wow about the product or service from start to finish to make them feel great about the experience? If you can get them to say wow about you and your service or product more often than the neighbor, you're going to be more committed to your value, product, and service in the negotiations, okay? So it's a great little exercise to do. Last but not least, you get into the actual 4 negotiation skills. There's a lot that you can read about, a lot of classes you can take. I think these 4 are the most obvious ones that all of us can learn in this one webinar and exercise them starting today, okay? The first one's called the Flinch. And I love this one because whether it's cultural based or my daddy always told me if I don't ask, I won't get, Like those conversations are basically a flinch. And so here's some cool things to know. 10% of Americans are flinchers. And all a flinch means is when you drop your price, whoa, are you kidding me? That's way too expensive. That's what a flinch is. Whether their facial expressions say that or they actually verbally out loud say it because they're aggressive, it doesn't matter. 10% of Americans flinch. So when I do this in front of large audiences, I've done this in front of 3,000 people at one time, okay? I have people raise their hands. Anyone that's a flincher, raise your hand, 10%. Then I'll pick out 2 or 3 of them and say, hey, listen, when you flinch, do you really expect that person to drop the cost of the diamond earrings? Or do you really expect them to drop the price of their car further? And the answer unilaterally is no. But if I don't ask, I won't get, right? So I learned this skill and I thought, that's really interesting. I'll just try it next time. That same day, AC repairman called me because I had a AC go out on one of my real properties. Said, bad news, Josh, it's definitely done. Good news, I can fix it. Bad news is the price is $4,000. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? $4,000? What was that price again? He replied within 5 seconds. I said $3,200. So in 5 seconds, my hourly rate went up a lot, $800 for 5 seconds, right? My point was, if he had called me back and said, or he said, I said 4,000, Josh, I would have said, these are banker hands, go ahead and fix them. There's no calluses here. I don't know how to fix my AC. 4,000 sounds really good to me. It's just understanding that flinchers flinch because of why? They're flinchers. That's why they flinch, okay? Second negotiation skill is silence. I alluded to that earlier with how to get people to get out of that subservient mindset. Like, are you crazy? Are you serious? Also, when somebody drops a number that's absurd, the better reply is nothing. I always tell people silence is best used on children and husbands, right? So I remember very distinctly, and here's why. Basically, when you're silent, people will start throwing up everything. They'll tell you all the goods. In a negotiation, that's a really, really good thing. So a long time ago, probably when I was 25 years old, I had just gotten married, and I walk in the door way too late because I've been hanging out with some of my buddies from Trinity. And I come in way too late, and I look at my new bride, and she's on the couch, and she's awake, and I thought she'd be asleep. It was like 3 a.m. And she's like, and I look at her, I was like, babe, you're up. It's never a good sign. And she's like, nothing, quiet, silence. And I said, are you good? And she said nothing, and she was silent. And all of a sudden I started reliving the entire night. I was like, but it was so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. We're at this place, and this place. Here's all the phone numbers if you want to call everybody, right? Truth is I did nothing wrong. But in negotiations, that's a great thing to remember. If you say nothing, reply with nothing, what's an absurd low number or whatever it is that you're negotiating, say nothing and they'll start coming up and telling you everything that you need to know, right? Third one, is the sidestep. So the way you use a sidestep is anytime somebody tries to pin you on a price before you have the opportunity to demonstrate your value, whatever your value adds is, your knowledge and your abilities, you have to sidestep the question. You have to. You have to tell somebody or explain to somebody what it is extra that we do, what the value is we bring, or you are a commodity. In the absence of that, all industries, everything can be reduced to a commodity. Buying cars, we can do that over the internet now. Buying houses, we can in theory go to Zillow. Buying mortgages, there's Quicken. There's 1,000 ways to do whatever, but they are absolutely different from a service perspective, from a knowledge perspective, from a leadership perspective. And so if you're in one of those industries and you're trying to help educate somebody in your sales process, you can't answer the question. You say, hey, listen, that's super important. I definitely want to address that. Before I answer that, I need to understand your goals. What's the most important thing to A, B, C? Whatever your series of questions are, you have to sidestep it. One thing I will tell you is a sidestep is best done face-to-face because we know that the vast majority of communication is done non-verbally. This sounds crazy what I'm about to tell people, but it's the truth. It works every single time. It's crazy. So literally, I use my hands a lot when I'm talking with somebody. And when somebody tries to do that to me, I literally say, hey, listen, that's a really important thing. I start shaking my hands so they look at my hands. Say, but just for a second, can we set that aside because I want to better understand your goals? And I watch their eyes crisscross as I do this, and I come back to center, and I start asking questions. And they go through the sales process. I thought it was ridiculous when I was taught that. That night, I went home. And I'm walking the door. By the way, I make lots of mistakes as a husband, so here's a great example of what not to do. So I opened the door, and my wife had politely left the trash. It's my responsibility by the back door. And I do an even worse mistake by stepping over it and proceeding to the couch. So I'm sitting down on the couch, and I've had a really hard day. And my wife walks over and obviously and rightfully so is aggressive. And she's like, are you kidding me? I had to take it over and remind you, and you stepped over it. And I said, babe, that's super important. I am so sorry, but just for a second, will you sit down here? I'd like to hear about your day. And I kid you not, she sat down, she forgot she was angry, and I actually forgot in the morning again, stepped over it again. I really caught it the next day, but now I take out the trash very well. But you got to sidestep it. You got to get back to demonstration of your value proctor service. So last but not least is this swap out. The swap out is the obligation close. So the last asterisk that you want to write off the side is whoever makes the final decision is more likely going to win the negotiation. So you never want to end a negotiation with a no or a take it or leave it, right? So when you get to that pivotal point where we might be able to make this work, but I'm really starting to violate policies or pricing guidelines or something like that for whatever you sell, all you got to do is make it a win-win by saying, if I will you. If I do this for you, will you do this for me? I didn't say yes, I didn't say no, which allows me to be in the driver's seat to make the final decision. Because if they say, yeah, Josh, no problem, I'll refer you 3 of my best friends, then I can make a business decision of, okay, doing this loan for free, no problem. But I'm going to rely on you to send me 3 referrals, right? And if you say, nope, absolutely not, I can make a business decision. I might still do it, but I at least know what I've got. And by just asking and trying to swap out, if I will you is the script, then your negotiations will end more positively because you weren't in the take it or leave it last question. You get to make the final decision, okay? So there's some basic negotiation skills. Was there any Q&A from the audience on this one?
Yeah, let me just go back to a question that David Geralt, one of your fellow alums and our entrepreneur in residence here at Trinity University Center for Entrepreneurship asked, Josh, are there any resources or readings to help practice the skill of correctly assessing the customer style? What would you recommend, Josh?
Reading for the disc, I'll tell you the best way to do it, the way I've learned, and there are some books, I don't know if they're great in their correlation to sales. It's more of an explanation of who this person is I'm talking to. The best thing to do is take the disc test yourself and have some of your colleagues take the disc, people that you know, because you know how they are, you know how your spouse, your best friend, your brother, your dad, and actually read them. They're about 26 pages for a normal disc. And when you read a few people, like, I think this person is this C personality Josh is talking about, I think this person's an I, and you read how they're motivated, how they make the decisions, what their benefits are, why they are being labeled an I or whatever, then you really very quickly get to internalize it. I think it's also great practice in any business. Every single person you hire, before they're hired, every interview, you've got to make them take a disc. Because then as you're sitting across the table from somebody, you get to understand a little better of, would this personality best fit this role? So it's not about reading about the disc, it's reading the disc, I think is the best answer.
Excellent. And from Tiffany Chimal, the question is, Josh, do you recommend following up with leads that say they need to think about it? And if so, which close tactic should you use?
So the answer is yes. If you don't, so there's 4 parts to a sale: initial contact, building rapport, closing skills, and follow-up. The 4th step is this question: follow up, follow up, follow up. I believe in any organization where we are, I should find out why I lost the deal anyways. Following up, they say, I went with somebody else. Cool. Thank you for letting me know that. What can I learn? What could I have done to earn your business so I don't lose future business? Would you just give me the opportunity? But at least it shows them that I care about them individually by following up with them over and over. They weren't a number in the rotary, right? They weren't just the one call. It shows that I have a follow-up, which is a sign of customer service, right? So absolutely follow up with them. If you're following up, you're starting from behind. I think it goes back to open-ended questions. What are you still mulling over right now? What other questions can I answer for you? Where are you in the decision process right now? So that's how I would handle that. I know we're running out of time here. We're here at the hour. And so I was thinking about what would be a great book that would really help everyone with negotiation. And I always key back into commitment. The commitment to value, product, and service. The best book I think every business person, man or woman, should read, for sure, is called Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard. And what it talks about is 5 different small businesses and what they did to get their clients to say, wow, 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 from beginning, during, and after the sale. Because we want to work with people that we know, like, and trust, and it starts with delivering a world-class customer service experience. So before you try and instill and use tactics on people, start by looking at your business, your service, and your product and figure out, how can I make this a world-class experience? Because people will flock to you. You won't have to ask for business, they'll just come. So I hope that was worthwhile. Dean, do you have any final? I think we've got another webinar coming up in the future as well. You want to talk about as well, correct?
Yeah, Josh, I just want to personally thank you for taking the time to plan and present these 2 sessions on the best negotiating and closing skills. Really useful information that we can use in a variety of venues, including business and personal and other professional discussions and negotiations and transactions that we have in daily life. So thank you
You're
very
very
much.
welcome. Very welcome.
Very much appreciative. And I know that our alumni listeners and viewers feel the same way. Also want to thank everyone for attending this live webinar. And our next webinar is scheduled in 2018, in the new year, January 23rd at noon, featuring Mike McBride, class of 1989, and chair of the Indian Law and Gaming Practice Group for the law firm Crown and Dunleavy. Mr. McBride will lead a discussion on David Grann's bestseller, Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murder, and the Birth of the FBI. Again, I want to thank Josh Sigman for being here not only today, but for the first part in the series. I want to thank all of you for being here and participating in our alumni webinars, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Happy holidays and a great 2018 ahead.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.